Have you ever felt like you're drowning, but everyone around you keeps calling it ambition? You wake up tired, you work through the pain, you smile when you want to scream, and somewhere along the way, the word burnout became a kind of compliment, a twisted badge of honor in a world that feeds on your exhaustion. They say you're burned out. But what if you're not? What if you're not just tired, you're being hollowed out? What if this isn't fatigue but something deeper, more insidious? What if you're being stripped of meaning piece by piece, and they're calling it success? In today's world, suffering isn't a warning sign. It's a business model. The more you grind, the more valuable you appear. Not because your humanity is appreciated, but because your productivity is monetized. A 12-hour day doesn't raise eyebrows anymore. Working weekends is expected. Being always available is a mark of commitment. But who is profiting from this? Certainly not you. In the silence of your apartment, after another endless shift, with your eyes burning and your soul numb, you feel it. The emptiness. Not just the tiredness in your muscles, but the absence of meaning in your life. This is not accidental. This system was never built to make you whole. It was built to make you useful. And the moment you stop being useful, you're discarded. You were not born to serve spreadsheets. You were not born to answer emails at midnight. You were not born to beg for purpose in a structure that profits from your confusion. Burnout is not your personal failure. It is the emotional consequence of being turned into a resource. In capitalist logic, you are not a person. You are labor in motion. And the moment you begin to ask why you're doing all this, the system turns your suffering into a branding tool. Work hard, play hard, they say, as if fun is earned only after your body collapses. But here's the hidden truth. This isn't about laziness. It's not about discipline. It's about alienation, a theft of meaning so complete, it makes you doubt your own value unless you're producing. We confuse exhaustion with purpose. We mistake sacrifice for success. We glorify burnout as if it were a rite of passage to something sacred. But the only thing sacred here is profit. And you are sacred only to the extent that you can generate it. So maybe it's time to ask, are you actually burned out? Or just awakening to a life that was never yours? You sit at your desk staring at a screen filled with tasks, deadlines, numbers, and noise. You're working. Technically, you're productive. But something inside you whispers, this doesn't matter. Have you ever wondered why so much of your effort feels pointless? You hit your targets, you get the raise, maybe even the promotion. But the feeling of fulfillment? It never arrives. Instead, there's a quiet, persistent ache, like you're building a house with no doors. You're pouring your energy into something, but there's no place for you inside of it. That ache has a name. Alienation. Alienation is when your work no longer reflects you. It's when what you create is no longer connected to who you are. It's when your hands are busy, but your soul is silent. Capitalism didn't just industrialize labor, it mechanized the human spirit. Your time, your thoughts, your creativity, all repackaged, repurposed, and resold. You work not to build a world, but to sustain a machine. A machine that doesn't know your name, doesn't care about your dreams, only your output. This is why your work feels hollow. Because the value you create doesn't stay with you. It goes up the ladder to shareholders, to executives, to a system that sees you as a means, never an end. You are told to follow your passion. But when your passion is monetized, it becomes a prison. You start measuring your self-worth by your productivity, and slowly your identity becomes a job description. You're not a designer, you're deliverables, not a teacher, you're performance metrics. Not a human being, you're a role, a resume, a unit. This is not work, this is estrangement. Estrangement from yourself, from your community, from your purpose. Karl Marx warned us, when workers are separated from the product of their labor, they are separated from themselves. You may still have a paycheck, but you've lost something else, something deeper, a sense of belonging to what you do. You don't own your work. And because of that, your work cannot heal you. So you scroll, you binge, you escape, looking for something, anything to make the hours feel human again. But here's the quiet tragedy. It's not your fault. This emptiness is designed. This meaninglessness is engineered. You are not broken. You are reacting normally to a world that has made meaning itself a commodity. A world where art becomes content, where care becomes customer service, where joy becomes engagement, where life becomes brand. And in that transformation, you disappear. But if you feel the emptiness, you're still alive. If you feel the disconnect, you're still human. And that feeling is the beginning of resistance. What does it mean to live a meaningful life? To wake up and feel connected to what you do, to the people around you, to the impact of your actions, to something larger than yourself? Now ask yourself, when was the last time you felt that? In capitalism, meaning is not something you're given. It's something that's taken from you and then sold back to you at a premium. This is the great theft of the modern world, not just of your time, not just of your energy, but of your spirit. The purpose you once sought in creativity, in contribution, in care, is now buried beneath performance reviews, algorithms, and quarterly earnings. Capitalism doesn't just want your labor, it wants your identity. It wants you to believe that fulfillment comes from hitting KPIs, optimizing your time, and building your personal brand. It wants you to find purpose in your productivity and call it freedom. But behind this illusion, there is a deeper truth. You're being robbed. Robbed of the right to create something that matters to you. Robbed of time to sit in silence, to love without agenda, to imagine without ROI. You are being stripped of human meaning, and in its place, sold economic utility. Why does it feel like no job is ever enough? Because no job can give you what the system is designed to extract. Capitalism cannot give you purpose. It can only sell you distractions to numb the absence of it. The purpose you long for, the purpose that keeps you up at night, cannot be measured by profit. It cannot be outsourced, monetized, or managed. It grows in freedom, in connection, in shared humanity. But that kind of meaning threatens the system, because a worker who finds real purpose beyond the job is a worker who might start to ask, why does my worth depend on what I produce? Why do I trade my best hours for someone else's wealth? Why do I feel most alive only when I stop working? These questions are dangerous because they crack the spell. They reveal that the real theft is not just about money. It's about belonging. You don't belong to your work. Your work belongs to someone else. You've been convinced that doing what you love inside capitalism is freedom. But it's not freedom, it's camouflage. Even your passion can become a product. Even your purpose can be priced. And the more you internalize this, the more you disappear. But if you feel that something has been stolen from you, you're right. And if you long to reclaim it, you're not alone. The first act of resistance is to see clearly, to name the theft. To remember that meaning was never meant to be bought, it was meant to be lived. There's a quiet moment just before the alarm rings, when the world hasn't yet swallowed you. You're still wrapped in your thoughts, untouched by tasks, untouched by roles. For a second you feel human, but then it begins. The calendar reminds you of your obligations. The emails start to flood in. The pressure returns, like gravity, pulling you into a life that doesn't feel like yours. Have you ever felt like you're just visiting your own life? Like you're always performing, adjusting, reacting, but never actually being? That feeling has a name. It's not laziness, it's not anxiety, it's alienation, the invisible cage of modern existence. Alienation is what happens when the structure of life no longer reflects who you are, but instead reflects what the system needs you to be. You don't decide your pace, the market does. You don't shape your time, the platform does. You don't own your day. Your job, your bills, your apps own it. You've been fragmented into tasks, into clicks, into metrics. You are everywhere and nowhere. hyper-visible online but emotionally invisible in real life, constantly busy but strangely absent, even from yourself. And worst of all, you've been taught to blame yourself for it. They say you need better time management, better habits, more hustle. As if this was just a problem of personal discipline, not a system built to devour your attention and hollow out your soul. Karl Marx saw this coming. He warned that under capitalism, the worker becomes a stranger to the product of their labor, and eventually a stranger to themselves. You don't recognize your own life anymore, because your life has been reorganized for productivity. You don't choose your meaning, it's assigned. You don't follow your curiosity, you follow instructions. You don't create, you execute. This is the quiet tragedy of modern alienation. You keep showing up for a life that was never truly yours, like an actor in someone else's play, like a passenger on a train you didn't board willingly, like a ghost walking through their own home. But here's what they don't tell you. Alienation isn't your fault. It's the natural outcome of a system that sees you not as a person, but as a resource. A system that teaches you to find balance while it profits from your imbalance. That asks for your passion and gives you burnout. That celebrates your resilience while exploiting your silence. You weren't born to feel disconnected from your own life. That's not a personal failure. That's structural violence, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. You start to notice the masks, the scripts, the simulations. You realize you've been surviving a system that never made space for your full humanity. But the moment you name the alienation is the moment you begin to come home. Not to a place, but to yourself. They tell you that you're free. Free to choose your job. Free to chase your dreams. Free to build your brand, curate your image, and hustle your way into a better life. But here's the truth no one says out loud. Choice doesn't equal freedom. Not when every option serves the same system. We are taught that freedom means options. But what if every path leads to the same kind of exploitation? What if your choices are just different doors in the same prison? You can choose between working 50 hours at a startup or 50 hours in a corporate office. You can choose between being underpaid as a freelancer or underappreciated as an employee. You can choose which brand of exhaustion you wear, but not whether or not you burn out. This is the illusion of capitalism, that your suffering is voluntary, that you picked this life, that if you're unhappy, it's your fault, not the system's design. But real freedom isn't about picking between cages. Real freedom is about deciding the architecture of your life. And most of us never get that chance. From a young age, we are shaped by invisible hands, molded by media, school systems, algorithms. We are told what success looks like, what ambition means, what's worth wanting. And when we choose, we do so within a framework built for someone else's benefit. Your career, pre-scripted, your dreams, market-influenced, your desires, monetized. We confuse consumer freedom with human freedom. I can pick my phone, my apps, my car, my streaming service. But can you choose not to sell your time for survival? Can you choose to rest without guilt? Can you choose a life that isn't bound by debt, deadlines, or domination? Because that would be freedom. Marx taught us that ideology is most powerful when it feels like common sense, when you no longer question the structure, only your performance within it. And this is the greatest trick of capitalist freedom. It makes you believe you're in control, while it controls what you believe. You feel exhausted, but you tell yourself, this is what growth looks like. You feel alienated, but you call it ambition. You suffer, and you say, maybe I just haven't found the right path yet. But the path isn't broken. It was built to lead you here. A life of endless productivity, chronic dissatisfaction, and spiritual numbness, disguised as choice. So what now? Do we give up? Resign ourselves to the machinery? Or do we begin to imagine something different? Not just different jobs, not just different careers, but a different way of relating to life itself, where value isn't defined by profit, where rest isn't a luxury, where freedom means wholeness, not just selection. And that begins with unmasking the illusion, with naming the cage, no matter how many options it gives us. Because once you see the walls, you can begin to push against them. We used to pray in churches. Now we pray to calendars, to inboxes, to glowing rectangles that demand our faith through constant attention. In today's world, productivity isn't just a habit, it's a belief system, a religion with no sacred text, yet millions of devoted followers. It's gospel: do more, be more, own more. And like all religions, it promises salvation, not in the afterlife, but in the next promotion, the next milestone, the next achievement that might finally make you feel whole. But what if that wholeness never comes? You cross one finish line, and there's another. You check off 100 tasks, and there's always one more. You wake up tired, but instead of resting, you feel guilty. Like rest is a sin. This is the theology of late capitalism. You are valuable not because you exist, but because you produce. You are your output. You are your performance. You are your stats, your reach, your quarterly review. And in this cult of productivity, stillness becomes heresy. To pause is to risk falling behind. To rest is to risk irrelevance. To say no is to risk being replaced. And so you keep going, not because you're inspired, but because you're afraid. Afraid of being seen as lazy. Afraid of being left behind. Afraid that if you stop moving, you might finally hear the silence. And what it's been trying to tell you. That silence says, you are not your labor. But the system doesn't want you to hear that. Instead, it wraps you in rituals, morning routines that mimic factory schedules, apps that track your wellness like inventory, self-help books that preach hustle like scripture. And through it all, you're told that this is empowerment, that this constant grind is how you grow, that if you're overwhelmed, it's just a phase, one more test of your devotion. But here's the truth. This isn't growth. It's erosion. You're not becoming more. You're becoming less of yourself and more of what the system needs you to be. Karl Marx warned us that under capitalism, the worker becomes an appendage of the machine. And now, the machine is invisible, built into our culture, our language, our very self-worth. The worst part? We've learned to police ourselves, to feel ashamed when we slow down, to doubt our worth when we're not productive, to internalize the logic of capital until it whispers with our own voice. But if productivity is a religion, then burnout is the apocalypse, the moment the system begins to collapse inside your body. And maybe that's where the truth begins. Not in more effort, but in less. Not in more doing, but in more being. Not in chasing salvation, but in questioning the gospel itself. Because what if you are already enough? What if your worth was never meant to be earned? Maybe the real revolution begins when we stop moving and start remembering who we were before we became useful. Do you remember your first dream? Not the dream of a job, a title, or a salary, but the pure one, the one born before the world got to you. Maybe it was to paint, to teach, to build, to heal, to feel something real. But look at you now, drowning in backlogs, managing deliverables, replying to emails that feel like digital echoes of someone else's urgency. Somewhere along the line, that dream was put into a spreadsheet, measured, broken into goals, assigned deadlines. What once made your eyes light up now makes your chest tighten. What once was sacred is now scheduled. And so we ask, how did we get here? The answer is simple and brutal. Capitalism consumes dreams, not all at once, not like a fire, but slowly, like a quiet erosion. First, it flatters you. It says, turn your passion into a career. Do what you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. But the moment your passion becomes your income, it becomes a product. And suddenly, your art must go viral. Your care must scale, your time must monetize. What was once yours is now deliverable. That dream you once held close now belongs to the marketplace. And here lies the tragedy. The system doesn't just steal your labor, it steals your why. You might still be doing what you love, but it no longer feels like love. It feels like survival, and you're told to be grateful. Grateful that you're making a living. Grateful that your dream is working. But inside, you know something sacred has been lost. Because when capitalism recycles your dreams, it doesn't preserve them, it repackages them. What was once a desire to heal becomes customer service. A longing to connect becomes influencer content. A hunger for justice becomes corporate social responsibility. The soul of your dream is replaced by a slogan. And every time you try to reclaim it, to slow down, to remember why you started, there's a ping, a task, a deadline, a voice telling you, you don't have time for meaning, there's work to do. But what if that's the real lie? What if it's not that we don't have time, but that our time has been stolen, reorganized, monetized, sold back to us in the form of urgency? You were never meant to chase your dream through exhaustion. You were meant to live it, freely, wholly, without needing to prove its worth. Karl Marx wrote of the workers' alienation from their labor. Today we are alienated even from our longings. Our dreams wear uniforms now. They clock in, they answer to clients, they meet KPIs. But deep inside that first dream, the one that was pure and which still lives, buried but not dead, quiet but still yours. And maybe that's where hope begins again, not in building new goals, but in unlearning the machine, in asking, what would your dream become if it no longer had to make money? What's the first thing people say when you ask how they're doing? Busy, as if that word alone explains everything, as if busyness is not just a condition, but an identity, a virtue. But behind the constant motion, the color-coded calendars, the overflowing inboxes, what are we running from? What happens when the noise stops? We have come to worship busyness, not because it brings joy, not because it brings meaning, but because it keeps us from confronting the void that asks, who am I when I'm not producing? Who am I when I'm not performing? Do I exist outside of my usefulness? Capitalism has turned activity into morality. If you're always doing something, you're good. If you're overwhelmed, you're committed. If you're exhausted, you must be valuable. And if you stop, you're lazy, you're selfish, you're falling behind. This is the fetish of busyness, the illusion that constant motion means significance, that filling every hour means living fully. But look closer. Busyness is not a sign of importance. It's a symptom of systemic theft, a sign that your time is no longer your own, that your life has been sliced into tasks, monetized, and repackaged as productivity. And the worst part? You start to believe it. You check your phone not because you want to, but because silence feels unsafe. You multitask during meals, during walks, during rest. Not because you're efficient, but because stillness feels like failure. You don't remember the last time you were truly present. Because presence doesn't earn praise. Stillness doesn't pay bills. So you keep moving, keep replying, keep checking boxes, while your sense of self grows thinner. Marx spoke of commodity fetishism, when we begin to see value in objects, but not in the labor, the lives, the humanity behind them. But today, we don't just fetishize products. We fetishize performance. We wear busyness like armor, as proof that we matter, as a shield against the terror of being unseen. But here's the truth. The more you do, the less you feel. The more you chase, the less you notice. The more you become a machine, the less you remain human. This isn't just unsustainable, it's dehumanizing. Because somewhere inside, you are still a person, not a calendar, not a KPI, not a brand. And your worth was never meant to be measured in output. Imagine a life where your value didn't depend on motion, where doing nothing wasn't laziness, but resistance, where rest was not a reward, but a right. That's the revolution capitalism fears. A person who no longer confuses movement with meaning. A soul that dares to stop, and finally, to feel. You lie in bed after another endless day. You've done everything right. You answered the calls. You checked the boxes. You showed up. But still, something feels wrong. You're exhausted. But it's not just your body. It's deeper, quieter, heavier, and you start to ask the question that lives like a shadow behind every to-do list. What's wrong with me? Let me offer you something radical and true. Nothing is wrong with you. You're not lazy. You're not weak. You're not failing. You're responding appropriately to a system that is built to exhaust you. That tiredness you carry, that numbness that creeps in, that quiet grief you can't explain. That's not dysfunction. That's your humanity speaking, because this world wasn't designed for human thriving. It was designed for extraction. Every structure around you, the workplace, the economy, the digital platforms, is optimized not for your wellness, but for your output. And when you start to suffer under that pressure, they don't change the system. They sell you coping mechanisms, apps, supplements, motivational quotes, self-care that keeps you functioning, but never questioning, wellness that soothes the symptoms but leaves the cause untouched. You are not broken. You are just living in a structure that breaks people and then profits from the pieces. Marx called this the logic of capital, to extract as much as possible from the worker, while convincing them that their suffering is a personal issue. So we blame ourselves. We internalize the failure. We think we're not managing our time well enough. We think we just need better discipline, more routines, another round of optimization. But what if your exhaustion is not a personal flaw, but a political consequence? What if your fatigue is the evidence that your body still knows what's real, that you're not a machine, that you were never meant to run without rest, without purpose, without community? This system teaches you to gaslight yourself, to doubt your pain, to dismiss your instincts, to believe that your burnout is just a stage on the road to success. But you are not a project to be fixed. You are a person to be liberated. And liberation begins with clarity. You are tired because you're human in an inhuman world. You are disconnected because the system separates you from others, from meaning, from yourself. You are overwhelmed because capitalism demands infinite output from finite beings. And that's the truth beneath the fatigue. Not that you're broken, but that your suffering is a quiet rebellion, a signal, a refusal, a cry that says, "This is not how life should be." And in that cry, there is something sacred, not weakness, but awakening. Somewhere inside you, beneath the deadlines, the exhaustion, the silence, something is still alive. A voice, a question, a refusal. You've followed the rules, you've played the game, you've bought the dreams they sold you, and still, you feel the emptiness. But that emptiness isn't the end, it's the beginning. Because in a world that profits from your disconnection, reclaiming your meaning is a revolutionary act. The system wants you numb, because numb people don't resist. They cope, they comply, they survive. But the moment you ask, "What was I made for?" the illusion cracks. You were not made for endless productivity. You were not made to perform worth. You were not made to wake, work, scroll, sleep, repeat. You were made to feel, to connect, to imagine, to create without permission. Karl Marx didn't just critique capitalism, he envisioned its opposite, a world where labor is not a burden, but a form of self-expression, where work reflects your essence, not your desperation, where meaning is not sold but shared. We've been taught to locate our worth in things, in status, in money, in metrics, but real worth can't be quantified. It's found in the unmeasurable, in a conversation that heals, in a creation that moves someone, in a moment of rest where you feel whole again. You don't need to earn this, it's already yours. Reclaiming meaning doesn't require quitting your job, abandoning your responsibilities, or escaping society. It starts quietly, with noticing, with feeling again, with naming the systems that have tried to own your soul and saying no more, with recognizing that the fight for your time, your peace, your joy, is not selfish, it's political. Because every person who wakes up from the lie of capitalist purpose becomes a threat to the order. You begin to ask dangerous questions. Why is rest revolutionary? Why is slowness radical? Why is joy so hard to access? And the answers lead you to truth. Because meaning, true meaning, is the one thing capitalism can never fully control. It can co-opt your labor. It can buy your time. It can steal your dreams. But your awakening? That's yours. So if you're still feeling empty, good. It means your soul has not given up. It means you're still searching for something real. And in that search, you become part of a new humanity. A humanity that refuses to be reduced. That remembers we are not machines. That believes another way is possible. And that, as Marx said, doesn't just interpret the world, but dares to change it. So now, we return to the question that brought you here. Are you really burned out? Or are you being stripped of meaning? Maybe you're not falling apart. Maybe you're waking up. Waking up to the truth that exhaustion is not a personal failure. It's the residue of a system that exploits your time, your dreams, your humanity. Waking up to the reality that busyness is not a badge, it's a barrier. That burnout is not your identity, it's a symptom. That purpose was never meant to be purchased. It was meant to be lived. So now ask yourself, what have I accepted as normal that is actually unbearable? What parts of me have I abandoned to survive in a system that rewards disconnection? What would it look like to reclaim my time, my rest, my worth, without asking permission? Because your life is not a project. It is not a product. It is a revolution waiting to happen. And the most radical thing you can do in a system that commodifies everything is to feel again, to rest, to create without outcome, to love without profit, to exist without apology. If this video helped you feel seen, if it cracked something open in you, stay with us. Reflect. Comment below. What part of your meaning has been lost? And what are you ready to reclaim? And above all, join us for the next chapter. We are not just waking up, we are taking back what was never theirs to own.